Well, welcome to another premiere on this great YouTube channel, and hopefully you're a subscriber. If you're not, take a second and click subscribe. We have a lot of people that watch a lot of videos on this channel and never click that button. You click it, you're going to receive notifications as soon as a new premiere is posted. As soon as there's an impromptu premiere as well, you'll hear about it straight away. So it benefits you hugely to be in that inner circle, that VIP circle, by being a subscriber. So click subscribe, for goodness sakes. Do it right now. I'm going to wait. Did you do it yet? Come on. All right. Well, obviously we're looking at one of the incredible machines from the Slant-O-Matic family. This one happens to be a 401A, born in 1956. And it belongs to a local lady that heard about me through different channels, apparently. Someone had a real good experience and then told someone else, and someone else told another person, another person, another person, another person, and then finally they told Carmen. So that's a good thing. I love when I get someone that comes to me because they've heard about a positive experience that another customer has had. That's always my goal, but you know what? People are people, right? So the 401A was the first Slant-O-Matic to follow the 301 series. And we've talked a lot about the 301 on this channel. Again, the big sister to the featherweight. And as you might remember, just to revisit those facts again so that you've got them in your hip pocket and you can pull them out and amaze somebody at a party or a public gathering, as long as you're social distancing, of course. So you could tell them that the 301, the big sister to the featherweight, was the very first Slant-O-Matic machine put out by Singer. And it came out in 1952. And it ended in 1952, pretty much. It only lasted a year. So, and they made 185,750 of them. You're going to be tested on that, so you might want to write that down. And the 301s were made in Elizabethport, New Jersey. Now, just about a year later, in 1953, the 301A came on the scene. And that was not made in Elizabethport, New Jersey. It was made in Anderson, South Carolina. And it didn't come and go in 1 year. It lasted from 1953 to 1957. And there were about 514,250 of those 301As made. So you right away, being extremely smart in this classroom, you're saying, okay, so the 301A was made in Anderson, South Carolina. This has an A on it. It's a 401A, right, Scott? Right? Let's zoom in on it again. It's got an A at the end of it. So was this machine also made in Anderson, South Carolina? The answer is yes, it was. And it was made from 1956 until 1961. So not a bad run, about a 5-year run for the 401A. And then you might be saying to yourself, okay, you talked about the 301, you talked about the 301A, you talked about the 401A, and it left the scene in 61, it came onto the scene in 56. What followed the 401A as far as production for Singer? Well, I am glad that you asked that. It was none other than the 403A, and that started in 58 and went until 1960. Following that, we had the 404, which is a straight stitch only Slant-O-Matic machine, and that was on the scene from 58 until 63. And then we had our last two machines, which are classified oftentimes as not just as Slant-O-Matics, but as Slant-O-Matic Rocketeers. Bum-ba-da-dum! And that was the 500A, which came out in 61 and went until 63, and the 503A, one of my personal favorites, because it kind of looks like a cruise ship. Google it sometime. The 503A, just a sexy machine. I'm just going to say it. It just is. And that was out at exactly the same time as the 500A, from 61 until 1963. So From start to finish, when the 301 came on the scene in 1952 and the last machine within the Slant-O-Matic family was produced in 63, you do the math. Did you do it yet? 11 years. From 52 until 63, in one form or another, the Slant-O-Matic family was alive and well and being produced in Singer factories, either in Elizabethport, New Jersey, or in Anderson, South Carolina, for a period of more than a decade. Not bad. Not bad at all for an aluminum-based machine in a period of time when aluminum was still a little bit of a question mark for people. They had been used to the cast iron type machines, and then the cast or molded metal machines, and then aluminum came onto the scene, and they're just like, I don't know about this. But all in all, it was a very, very, very popular machine. And especially with the motor design on this, if you're not familiar with the Slant-O-Matic machines, they don't have a rear motor, they don't have a potted motor, they have a vertically mounted motor. So in this space right over here, you have a motor that is rated the same as a Singer 201-2 or a Singer 1591 at 0.54 amps, which means it peaks at about 0.6 amps. And the beauty of it is that it has a worm gear right in this part of the machine over here that interlaces with the balance wheel. And so you've got a machine that has positive traction direct drive. You push on the foot controller and boom, you're off and running. Kind of like an all-wheel drive car. There's just little or no slippage. It just goes after it. And so while Slant-O-Matics are not commonly thought of a machine that you use for heavy grade sewing, they really can be. And because on most of the models, in particular this 401A, because that worm gear that interlaces with the balance wheel is all metal, you're not going to have issues generally with it wearing down. Now the interlacing gears that are a part of the balance wheel, those are more of a Teflon type material. So if the fit isn't right, or if you don't maintain the machine properly, those could begin to degrade over a period of time. But they've been generally fairly bulletproof on these machines. Singer did a real good job of choosing a material that would be compatible with a metal worm gear and at the same time would stand up to the test of time nicely. So let's just walk around the machine a little bit, and I'll just point out a couple of things for you on this 401A. And part of it you've already seen because we kind of opened over in this region. But where most machines, if they have the capacity to manipulate the feed dogs, as far as the feed dogs being compatible for freehand embroidery or for darning or something like that, they're generally going to drop. But the design was different when it came to these Slant-O-Matics. They came with a throat plate manipulator. And I'll kind of come out on the shot a little bit and you can kind of see what I mean. So rather than the feed dogs dropping as you're used to seeing on most Singer machines, with this one, this little lever right here can be moved to the middle position, which is going to raise that throat plate. This plate right here is actually going to come up so that it's going to take a little bit of pressure off of those feed dogs. Or you can push it all the way up if you're wanting to remove that throat plate for purposes of cleaning out the lint, and you would just pop it up like you can see it right now and then rotate it to the rear, and then it would come off so you can access the feed dog area and clean all that out. But for normal sewing, you're going to have it in the down position so that those feed dogs are fully engaged. Now since we're in this region right now, you might be saying, well, how do you've been talking a lot about bobbins and how do you orientate them when you drop them into the raceway? Well, again, a great question. You guys are so smart. So to access it, first of all, you're going to slide this plate open, and you can see right away it's an easy drop-in style bobbin. You just drop it into the shuttle area, and it just seats in there beautifully. And then you're going to be positioning it so that the thread, when you drop it in, is coming over the top, like so. And so as that's unwinding, it's going to be unwinding like this, which you can see is counterclockwise. So you just want to make sure when you put it in, the thread is over the top, and that way it's going to unwind counterclockwise as that thread is distributed in the sewing process. What about the needle? The flat side of the needle on this machine is going to go to the rear. And you're going to be threading this machine, as you can see in the shot, you're going to be threading it from front to back. And the overall threading of the machine is not bad either. I can actually come off the tripod and show you real quick before we launch into things, because that might prove to be helpful for you if you're new to 401As, or if you acquire one, or whatever. It's just nice to know. So coming right off the top of the spool pin, we're going to be coming first of all through this thread guide right here, and you achieve that. There's a little tab right there basically. I'll kind of zoom in on it, and you just slide it underneath this little tab right there and just kind of bring the thread forward. And then you come down here through the tension discs, you come around the bottom of the tensioner, up through this spring, and you kind of draw the spring up so that that thread is going to go over that little thread guide right there. And then you're going to come up behind this thread guide, just like the other thread is as well, up to the take-up arm, all the way down. There's a thread guide right there that you have to go through. Another thread guide right there. It's not done yet. Another thread guide right there. They love their thread guides, don't they? And then finally, there's going to be another thread guide right there, which at present, it looks like the thread popped out when I was messing around with things, and so I've got to put it back in there. Hold on just a second. Go ahead and do that real quick. I don't know if you're going to be able to see. Yeah, you're going to see Dr. Singer is what you're going to see. Well, you'll be able to see the after result of what I did. So you're just going to, when you put it in, you're just going to come right through that little slit right there and just draw it to the rear and then bring it down. And then finally, after all those thread guides that we just went through, you're then going to be threading your needle from front to back. I'll kind of draw it taut so you can see that. And if you're unsure about the threading of the machine, or if you say, Scott explained it pretty good, but I still don't get it. Well, the beauty of this particular machine is they give you a quick access diagram right on the inside of the faceplate. So you can always review this, and they even give you the orientation of the bobbin as well down on the bottom there. So really cool, smart, quick reference, which I have to say, honestly, this is so much more convenient for the threading and the orientation of the bobbin than the reference chart that's on the inside of this lid that you need for most pattern selections on this machine. In order to access this, unless you glue your spool of thread in some way to the spool pin, and by the way, these are not original spool pins on these. When I got this machine from Carmen, and I told you about Carmen a little bit already. She's a local lady that heard about me. It had basically a little stub on this side, and over here it had nothing. They had all been snapped off. And that's the problem with these plastic type spool type pins, is they tend to get broken off very easily. You'll see a lot of the Slant-O-Matic machines where it'll have one spool pin, if they're lucky, and then the other one will be snapped off. So I replaced it with these for two reasons. One is they're a little bit thicker, a little bit more sturdy. Also, they have this base, this round base right here that the spool of thread can sit on, so you don't even need to put a felt on here if you don't want to. But if you want to access the patterns on the inside of here, so you know how to set what looks like the cockpit of a 747, then you've got to remove that spool of thread, set it on the bed in the front for a little bit, and then you can open this up and you can look in there at this cool quick reference chart. And if you look at the upper left side, you'll see right away the most basic thing that you'll probably need on this machine is going to be a straight stitch, right? So it shows you how to set that. The A is going to be for the column on the left of the controls. The K is going to be for the right. And then the 3 is going to be basically the red lever that controls needle position, it controls stitch width, and it also sets parameters for some of the decorative stitches. So looking at the straight stitching, I'll kind of come down to here, and you can decide if we're set correctly. So the left side again should be on A, the right side should be on K, and then it tells us that this little red lever should be on 3, which it is. The 3 is kind of on the bottom there if I lower the camera a little bit more. So we figured out the straight stitching, which is pretty doggone cool. We could pretty much take the rest of the day off now. But the other thing good about this particular position for these settings when you're on A and K is it then allows you to also manipulate this as far as needle position. When you move these away from the A and K, then this doesn't respond the same way when you're trying to change needle position, only when you're at the straight stitch setting of A and K and elemental P and all that kind of stuff. So you can see right now if we move this little red lever to the left, all of a sudden the needle moves to the left. If we move it back to the center, it moves to the center. If we move it all the way to the right, then our needle is orientated all the way to the right. So, and it doesn't, again, it doesn't function like that unless you have these set for the straight stitch on the A and the K. On other settings, as you'll see when we look at this diagram, this control center right here will do other functions. So you can see it has dual needle sewing directions as well, just below the straight stitch directions. And then it has up here on the upper right, which is what we're going to be doing in this premiere today, it has primary patterns. I'll zoom in on that a little bit more. And setting it, while initially when you look at this and it's a little bit daunting, it's like, holy mackerel, it's not horribly bad. Because you basically have 2 letters, and then when you're sewing the primary patterns, you're going to be setting the stitch width at less than 5, just like it says on the bottom there, right over in this area. So if we want to say select primary pattern number 1, which is the BL, to get that little fancy pattern that it shows right there below it, then we would take our brown knob, I'll come out on this a little bit, we would take our brown knob, again we need to move it to B, and we would push the brown knob in, and we would rotate it 1 position down to B, and then release it. And then we have to move the other knob to L, because we're going for the BL pattern. So we're going to accomplish that. We have to use the white knob now, which is the inside knob, but we don't push that in, we pull it out, and then we have to rotate it to get up to L, which is only 1 position up. We have to rotate it 1 position up by pulling it out. See if I can do this with the other hand. Pulling it out, and then rotating it up, and then releasing it. It's harder to do when you're holding a camera, obviously. And again, it's recommending for the primary patterns, as you can see, widths less than 5. So then we go down to what is also our stitch width and needle position, and we're already at 3, so we're good to go. I mean, we could even go up 1 to 4, we could go down to 2, we could go down to 1, as long as it's less than 5 is what it's telling us for the primary patterns. And then beyond the primary patterns, we have all of these combination patterns that we could also potentially generate with this machine as well. And I'm just going to kind of go across so you can look at them. Some pretty fabulous patterns, I think. And then like it says way on the bottom, For additional stitch patterns, see instruction book. See that way down there? For additional patterns, see instruction book. Plus, you could potentially put a series of cams in here as well to generate even additional stitches. All of these stitches that you're seeing on here right now are all going to be engineered into the machine, which really, I mean, back in the day when this was introduced, this thing was like the Cadillac of sewing machines, with all of these options that it afforded, and the fact that they were all engineered into the machine. You didn't have to keep popping cam after cam after cam in. But they even added that feature as well because cams were real popular back in the 50s and 60s. People loved using them. And it gave them, you know, they call them fashion discs, and it just gave them a sense of power and domination over the machine. So, pretty cool stuff. But again, the only downfall of this is that if, you know, unless you take like a picture of this and have it on your phone, or if you jot them down, quick little cheat notes or something like that, every time you're wanting to access one of these patterns, whether it's primary, whether it's combination pattern, whatever, then you've got to open up the lid, take the spool of thread off, and look at that quick reference. Now, some of that's going to be in your book as well, so you're not totally up a creek with no paddle. But I am, because the book that I have, and this is my copy of the book, I don't know if Carmen has a copy of the book or not, but this particular copy I have is in German. It's totally in German. So as you open it up, once you get past Singer, game over. Because look at all this. Van Osten, Achenblick. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. But the beauty of it is, what do they say? A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? You still have pictures. Thank goodness. You still have pictures in here. So if you need to look at how do I orientate the needle, you might not be able to read this, but you can see that they're putting the flat side to the rear. So even this book, which is all in German, is a resource to some extent. It even shows you how to wind the bobbin. So, yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that they, obviously they printed manuals in all kinds of languages. Singer did anyway. I can't even imagine how many languages, maybe 50 or 60 languages. And here's some of the cams that they're showing here that you can access as well if you have them available to generate some of these additional patterns. So again, even though it's in German, it's still a resource, which is kind of cool. What else did I want to show you? We didn't talk about it specifically, but this is obviously our stitch length control right over here. So right now I'm set right around by 6, which is going to give me the longest stitch possible. As we're sewing some of the pattern, as we're sewing some of the sewing patterns that we looked at on the inside of the lid, we're going to be moving this stitch length up a lot closer towards the fine region, probably right around 10 to 12 or somewhere in that range. And then if you go all the way to the top, you're going to be sewing in reverse. Okay, so that's just a quick little walk around the machine. Again, when you look at it initially, you feel like you're in the cockpit of a 747. It's a somewhat intimidating machine, especially for a very, very new person to sewing, a new person to vintage machines. But again, with the resource of a book that hopefully is in the language that you speak, along with the quick reference and other things that they give us, it's going to be a machine that you can figure out pretty quick. I'm just going to move these back to the original position again. That goes to A. This goes down to K. And we're going to leave that where it's set. So now we should be in a position now where we can launch into some of the straight stitch sewing that I'm going to do with Carmen's 401A. Let's go right down to the needle. We'll just jump into some sewing. And then we will pop over to Facebook a little bit as well, kind of in between some of the sew-offs, and I'll show you kind of how the machine came in, because it did not look like this and it did not run like this when I got it from Carmen, obviously. So Needed quite a bit of TLC. All right, a little bit of... I have kind of a feeling for jazz today, so you're going to notice all the music, assuming my internet stays in play, all the music is pretty much jazz blues. So... what should we sew first? Why don't we do some genuine elk hide? You guys know how much I like this stuff. And I think you like watching it being sewn too, because I mean it's basically like sewing a belt. You know what I mean? All right, let me make a little adjustment on the music. It's one of these songs that keeps getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And I do want you to be able to hear Carmen's machine, because it is running just, I mean, silky smooth now. It is a happy, happy, happy camper. Okay, so we're going to launch with this genuine elk hide. And again, this machine and pretty much all the Slantomatics come with a Bakelite style foot control, which has that little button you have to push. And I've got in some pretty big clodhoppers, so I'm going to do my best. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, so a single layer of genuine elk hide. Again, if you're new to the channel, look at the thickness from the side. Right around 4 or 5 ounces of genuine leather, elk hide in particular, chemically processed. All right, here we go. 4 or 5 ounces of genuine elk hide. Yes, I was a little bit heavy-footed there. I agree, I agree. I'll blame it on the shoes. It was the shoes. That's what it was. I also wanted to show you the power and the gumption of this machine as well, which I think is absolutely fabulous. And again, as I pointed out in one of the Facebook posts when someone was interacting with the post about Carmen's machine, I highlighted the fact that the 401 and 401A is, within the Slantomatic family, the machine that has the largest motor. The other ones are going to have a vertically mounted 0.54 amp motor, which still is a lot of power. I mean, that, again, that's equal to a 201-2 or a 1591. But the 401A comes with a 0.9 amp motor, which is going to be generating about a full amp when you look at peaking as far as the power. And this particular motor, if you look at all of the pictures I posted on Facebook, you're going to see that this motor was actually made in France. And I think the French did a fabulous job in generating a motor that has incredible power delivery. It really does. Look at the side again, the thickness of that. So let's come out and look at the totality of the stitching. And I will flip this around and we'll take a look at that lock stitch, which thankfully on this elk hide is fairly easy to see. Some of these leathers are really a bear when it comes to seeing that stitch because of the nap of it. But you can see here, Carmen's machine did just a fabulous job. Number one, the stitch quality, the spacing, the formation, the presentation of the stitch. It just doesn't get much better than that. Honestly, it doesn't. That's just, I mean, that's as close to a perfect stitch as you can get. It's just absolutely spot on. And again, we're talking about elk hide, which if you look again at the top of this edge, you know, we just blew through, we just blasted the equivalent of sewing a leather belt, and the machine didn't even pause or hiccup or blink when we did it. So again, you're seeing the evidence of that 0.9 amps that this French-made motor in this machine kicks out. I mean, it doesn't mess around. It doesn't mess around at all. So this is a definite pass. This single layer of elk hide, I'm going to throw that to the rear. And I'll put on a little bit more jazz blues music. Let's go to our next sew off, which I think we'll mess around with leather for a little bit. I think we'll just continue sewing leather for a little bit. Yeah, I'll come in just a little bit more. So again, we just did elk hide. Now we're going to be doing, let me just double check what we have here. I've got genuine cowhide, I've got protected full grain leather, and I've got Italian leather as well. Plus I have some additional leather pieces as well. So we'll buzz down this one first. This is going to be our genuine cowhide. They all look pretty much the same, don't they? It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. So we're going to buzz down and we'll lay down a straight stitch on this. We'll go down and around, and then we'll move on to our next sew off. And I'm going to launch into this cautiously, otherwise I'm going to be done and down the material before I can blink, because this machine has a lot of get up and go. A lot of get up and go. Okay, here we go. It just runs so doggone beautiful. All right, I'll close the box, assuming I can get the needle down and position it right. All right, that's going to be pretty close. I might not have closed it exactly perfectly. May have left a little bit open to make our box closers and our non-box closers happy. I mean, we are in a political season right now, so you got to play to both parties, you know what I mean? There we go. And that thread was kind of caught up a little bit there. This is some of that thread again from Joann Fabrics, which is really good thread, but maybe it's just sensitive to static or something, because you push it back and it kind of jumps back forward, almost like it has a mind of its own. But that is certainly not the case with Carmen's 401A. It has a mind of let's get it done. And you can see that immediately. Well, you've already seen it in the sew off. I mean, it launched into this like it was nothing at all. But better yet, it laid down a stitch that is absolutely break-worthy. Just as it did on the leather that is for the elk hide. Kind of move this a little bit more. It's kind of bent a little bit. It's kind of curling on me, so we'll do the best we can with it. But if we zoom in and you look at those stitches, that is exactly what we want to be seeing. From start to finish, the spacing, the formation, the integrity of the stitch, the presentation of the stitch is just absolutely gorgeous. Just gorgeous. All the way around. And again, this is not a super thin leather either. This is probably about 3 ounces of leather. And there are a number of machines I know that would have difficulty even sewing through a single layer like this. But you saw right here live how easily Carmen's 401A got the job done. I mean, it just blew through it like it was like a hiccup. Now this is our lock stitch. A little bit more of a nap on this, so it might be a little bit harder to see, but I think we'll still be able to pick the stitches out pretty easily. And as you can see with the lock stitch as well, the spacing, the formation, the presentation of the stitch is exactly as it should be. I might do just a slight little increase on upper tension for this type of leather to tighten up that lock stitch even more, to define it more. But all in all, a very good result. A very good result. And again, if we come out on the shot a little bit, you can kind of look at that nap, and that nap just says, good luck. Good luck, buddy. Good luck trying to get through me. It ain't going to happen. But it did happen. And Carmen's machine did just a fabulous job. So I'm going to throw that to the rear as well as an example of an excellent stitch done. Now we're going to move into some Italian leather right after I pick out a little bit more music. And we will buzz down some Italian leather. So far we've done elk hide, we've done cowhide, and now we're going to do some Italian leather as well. Oh, what else do we have for jazz and blues? This one's called We Ride. And you know what? I have not been giving you the titles, have I? The last one was called Staycation. The one before that was We Made It. A Kiss for Amanda. And now we're going to do We Ride. All right, here we go. Oh yeah. If this isn't a leather sewing song, I don't know what a leather sewing song is. I probably don't. All right, let's buzz down this Italian leather now. All right, here we go. And I meant literally buzz. All right, down to the finish, and we are not going to close the box. Here we go. And I'll try to slow it down a little bit just so you can see you don't have to gun it. You don't have to gun it. See that? You can harness the power. Even with my clodhoppers on, you can. So if you have better shoes than I have on that are more suitable for a button style foot controller like this, you're golden. You're golden. Well, if you're not impressed yet with how beautifully this machine is sewing, then I'm surprised, because this machine is just doing fabulous with all of these leather sew-offs, including this very slippery, so you can see how slippery it is, it won't even stand up, this slippery Italian leather. Let's take a look at these stitches real quick. Top row first. Yeah, I know. Textbook, page number 3, the perfect stitch. There it is! Look, Mom! Beautiful stitching, beautiful stitching. Oh my goodness gravy. And there's our totality of stitching. Flip it around and look at that lock stitch. Yeah, it's going to be harder to see on this Italian leather. It's got a little bit more of a nappiness to it, but we'll do our best. Beautiful stitching as well, lock stitch on this Italian leather. And see how every leather responds differently to the thread and needle you're using. Here we probably would not need to make a upper tension adjustment to increase the upper tension to define that lock stitch better. We've got generally very good definition on the lock stitch on this Italian, whereby when we sewed the genuine cowhide, it was evident that a slight adjustment of that upper tension to increase the definition of that lock stitch would be a prudent thing to do if we were going to sew a lot of genuine cowhide. But here we're good to go. I mean, it looks fabulous. It looks fabulous. The stitch definition, the presentation, both for the lock stitch and for the top stitch, it just doesn't get much better than that. It just doesn't. It's fabulous stitching. So I'm going to throw that to the rear as a pass as well. And the next thing we're going to move on to, we'll move away from leather for a little bit, and I think we'll move into some compressed felt. Some compressed felt. And we'll see how Carmen's machine does with this stuff. But first of all, we're going to play Road Trip. Road Trip. Here we go. And I don't want to get any nasty notes from anybody about me playing music while we're sewing, because I've got the music turned way down low, and you can very easily hear how beautifully Carmen's 401A is running. If you can't, it's probably worth a doctor's visit. You never know. But so we're going to go through 3 layers of this like we typically do. I'm going to start with 2 layers by folding it about midway. Then I'm going to bend it one more time over to get us up to 3 layers of this. And if you're real new to this channel, you probably don't know, but I forgot to lock the camera. Yeah, hold on a second. You probably don't know that on another premiere, I actually broke a Schmetz needle. I think it was a size 90. I broke a Schmetz needle sewing this material, this compressed felt. So don't assume, oh, felt. Okay, that's got to be an easy sew off. It's like sewing patio blocks, folks. It really is. It is the thick of thick when it comes to a material, and because the weave is so compressed, it just really is tough stuff to get through. But I think Carmen's machine is going to get the job done pretty doggone easy. All right, down and around, compressed felt, 3 layers. Here we go. Ooh, I almost went too far. That was close. We're right on the edge. We're right on the edge. Is it going to work? We'll see. Yeah. See that? Operator error, but the machine saved me. The machine did it. Right, Dr. Singer? Yeah. All right, let's take a look at these stitches. Again, 3 layers of compressed felt. I think this is the coolest stuff because when you sew it, it creates this little pucker effect right in the middle of your stitching. I could see this stuff being used for a number of different applications and generating some beautiful projects. Beautiful projects. Of course, when you have a beautiful stitch, that helps a little bit too, doesn't it? And that's exactly what we have. And no, I didn't close the box. It just doesn't get much better than that, folks. That is a gorgeous stitch all the way around. All right, totality of the stitching. Spin it around, we'll look at that lock stitch. That from the side. Again, if you could feel this with your own hands, you'd be like, holy mackerel, that stuff is intense. And it really is, this compressed felt. But it didn't in any way intimidate this 401A. Just look at that stitching. Will come out on the shot as well. That is some primo stitching. So these 3 layers of compressed felt, slam dunk for this 401A. No problem at all. So I'm going to throw that to the rear. And so far we've gone through 3 layers of compressed felt. We've gone through Italian leather. We've gone through genuine cowhide. And we've gone through genuine elk hide as well. And this machine has just, without missing a beat, has just gone boom, 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 boom. Done. Done. But again, as you'll see from the Facebook shots, a machine doing sew-offs like this with this level of ease, do not make the assumption then if you go to eBay, if you go to Craigslist, if you go to Facebook Marketplace, and you go, I saw this video that, this premiere that Scott posted of this 401A, it is the cat's meow. I've got to get one of those machines so I can do all the things that I saw him do on that premiere. Don't think like that. Please don't think like that. That's like going onto a used car lot and seeing 2 cars of the same make, model, and year sitting next to each other and assuming that they're both going to drive identically, that they're both going to last the same amount of time. It's not logical. And it's no more logical to try to attach that to a sewing machine. Every machine has had a different life. It's had a different maintenance schedule or a lack of maintenance. It's been sometimes neglected or abused in certain ways. So every machine, once it leaves the factory, is no longer equal. So if you watch a premiere like this and you get inspired and you get excited about, oh my gosh, I think the 401A is just an amazing machine. Well, it is. It absolutely is. And if we had the luxury of being able to go back and go to Anderson, South Carolina and pick one up brand new, matter of fact, pick 2 of them up, they probably would perform nearly identical because they had just left the factory. But if we went to a used sewing store, or a sewing store, and they had used machines, and we had 2 401s, one on the upper shelf, one on the middle shelf, they're both going to perform differently, even if that service technician there worked on them, because they've had different lives. And I always say, I will always bring a machine to its absolute optimal performance level, but that's going to be different for every machine. So, but my point is this. If you see a premiere on a particular machine and you just think it's the cat's meow, reach out to me. Because the reality is, instead of buying one on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or one of the other places and discovering that it doesn't do what you saw my machine do, or in this case Carmen's machine, on that premiere, then save yourself the headache and the extra cost and just say, Scott, I want you to source me a 401A if you don't have one right now in your personal collection, and I wanted to be able to do all the things that I saw Carmen's machine do. Now we have a winning recipe that I can work with. So just keep that in mind. Don't watch one of the premieres and get excited about a machine and then have that bubble popped when you all of a sudden get that machine shipped to you through eBay, or you pick it up from Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and all of a sudden that machine isn't doing the things that you saw Carmen's machine do in this premiere today. It's not delivering a perfect stitch. It's not mowing through leather and other things just like a hiccup. Your machine, you sit down to it and it's barely able to sew, a couple layers of cotton or denim. So just to avoid all the frustration, contact me, as many have done, and let me set you up with a machine that's fully restored and will kick the butt, literally, of any material you put underneath that presser foot. Okay? Fair enough? All right. And I'm sorry for saying but I had to say it. Very passionate about that. So that was Road Trip. Now we're going to go to Backwoods Barbecue. And I got to pick out something fun to sew if we're going to do Backwoods Barbecue, because I think this is kind of a peppy tune. You know what I mean? Here we go. Oh yeah. Almost kind of a dueling banjo start here or something. I got to turn this up a little bit. Oh yeah. All right, let's do some of this commercial grade canvas. You've seen me sew this several times. I'm starting with 2 layers, and again, if you were to hold this stuff in your own hands, it is incredibly strong. And again, this stuff it's just built like a tank. So we're going to go with 2 layers starting, then we're going to fold it in the middle, get us up to 4, and then we're going to fold it one more time to get us all the way up to 6 layers of this commercial grade canvas. Now let me tell you something. Don't try this at home. And remember to lock your screen on your camera if you're doing something similar to what I'm doing right now. I forgot again. Plus I'm like a mile away. What the heck? Because we were just looking at the machine. Let's get closer. All right. Look at that from the side. See that? I intentionally was way out on the shot and then got in so you could just be like, whoa, look at how thick that is. Holy cow. It's 6 layers of commercial grade canvas, and he's going to sew with a 401A? No way. Yes way. Yes way. Yes way. All right, we're going to do that song one more time because I think it's a fun song. It's just some real cool guitar work, you know what I mean? Yeah. All right, and we're just going to buzz right down the middle, so I better get it in the middle. Pressure foot is down. Put your seatbelts on. Get your take-up arm to the highest position. Let's get this done. Here we go. was decisive sewing. That was decisive sewing. And yes, that was 6 layers of commercial grade canvas that we just went through. And Carmen's 401A was like, done. What's next? What's next? They just got it done with such ease, it's almost ridiculous. All right, let's take a look at these stitches. 6 layers of commercial grade canvas. Again, this stuff, in my opinion, is even thicker and tougher than the U.S. Army grade canvas. What do you think of that stitch? Yeah. That is called a drop dead gorgeous stitch, folks. That's the top stitch. Let's look at the lock stitch now. Angle it just a little bit more. So again, we're talking about 6 layers of commercial grade canvas. And now we're looking at the lock stitch. And there's just no difference. The spacing, the formation, the integrity of the stitch is just absolutely spot on. Absolutely gorgeous stitching. Absolutely gorgeous stitching. And again, if we come out on the shot, there's the totality of the stitches, which they speak for themselves. I don't need to say anything more than look at them. Look at those stitches. That again is our lock stitch, our top stitch. Next. I mean, literally next. I mean, that's kind of what it is. So I'm going to throw that to the rear as well as an absolute success and a pass for this 1956 Singer 401A. Again, 1956 was the first year that the 401A was introduced. So it's kind of cool that Carmen's machine is in that very first series of machines that came out of that factory, where the 301As came out as well, over there in the great state of South Carolina, Anderson, South Carolina. So just a quick little recap, and I'll just kind of throw it on the front of the bed here. I'll come on this shot a little bit. And yes, I cleaned up the machine too, duh. Absolutely. So far, I actually remembered to lock the camera this time. Yay! And I'm not doing these in order. So here's our 6 layers of commercial grade canvas, slam dunk, genuine elk hide, slam dunk, genuine cowhide, slam dunk. Wait, switch that, reverse that. Genuine, that's genuine Italian leather. Now cowhide, slam dunk. And last but not least, we've got our compressed felt, 3 layers of that. Now for most people, a sandwich that thick of confirmation sew-offs would be more than you would ever see from someone that was presenting a machine generally on YouTube. They would give you 1 or 2 stitch-offs and you're lucky. Don't complain, because that's all they're going to give you. We're not even done yet. We've got more stitch-offs that we're going to do with this 401A, because I really want to showcase the beauty of a machine after it's gone through my finalization process. What it's able to do and how easily it gets the job done is just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. So that was Backwoods Barbecue. And now we're going to play 3 Wise People. 3 Wise People. No idea what this one's going to be about. Alright, here we go. Yeah, this is kind of a chill song. I like it. I like it. Alright, let's zoom in on the needle and we'll do some heavy-duty denim now. We'll do some heavy-duty denim. Yes, I remembered to lock the camera this time. And I even turned the screen around. It's a good day. It's a good day. Alright, so here's some heavy grade denim. We're going to start with 2 layers. I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half. And we're going to be sewing down and around with 4 layers of heavy grade denim. We could certainly go higher than that. Again, the purpose of these premieres is not to show the max of the machine. It's to demonstrate the quality of stitching and sew a diverse field of different materials so you can see the versatility of the machine as well when it comes to being able to handle different material types successfully. So I'm going to go ahead now and get this under the presser foot, and we'll buzz down this, and then we're getting pretty doggone close to the finish line for this machine. Other than I do want to demonstrate some of those primary stitches as well so you can see those. Just trying to get this lined up just right. This almost sounds like a song from like one of the Peanuts movies or something around the holidays, doesn't it? It does to me. Alright, so down and around through 4 layers of heavy grade denim. Here we go. Alright, the box is going to stay open, so get over it. Here we go. And I intentionally slowed it down a little bit. I could have blasted that, but I didn't, because I wanted to show again that you can harness that power. But this 0.9 amp motor in this 401A, again, unique to this model. The other Slantomatics have a substantially smaller motor. This 401A, I mean, if it's running at the top of its game, there's not a whole lot that you can put underneath that presser foot that this machine is not able to handle with a fair amount of ease. Especially if it's gone through my process. It's gonna, because as you've seen in some of the Facebook shots, hopefully, I mean, I pulled the motor out of this and serviced the motor and everything. So it's, I mean, inside and out, bobbing the balance wheel. This machine, after going through my process, is, well, kind of like Hans said in the recent premiere, I'm so intense about my process. Generally, the machines are going to outperform what they could have done when they originally left the factory. And that's not a false claim. I've had a number of service technicians that worked for Singer back in the day that have said the very same thing. They would go house to house demonstrating machines, and they said, what I've seen your machine do, I had the same make and model. There's no way my machine could have handled that coming right out of the factory. It says a lot. And also this stitch says a lot too, doesn't it? Absolutely amazing stitch. And again, we didn't sew 1 or 2 layers of this stuff. We went through 4 layers of heavy grade denim. And there's the totality of stitches right there, which are absolutely spot on spectacular. Spot on spectacular. They just are. Turn this over and we'll look at that lock stitch. And I'm seeing a gorgeous lock stitch as well. Beautiful stitching all the way around. So no matter what we've given this machine so far as material and thickness is, it's just gotten the job done beautifully. Carmen's machine is running at the top of her game right now. And here I would probably increase the upper tension a little bit if I were doing a lot of denim sewing, just to make that lock stitch a little bit more defined. It's a gorgeous looking lock stitch, but I'm seeing an opportunity just to tighten it just a little bit. So again, the way you do that is you can either reduce the bobbin pull or you can increase the upper tension. It's a whole lot easier to increase the upper tension. We'll come out on the totality of the stitches again. And those are just absolutely gorgeous stitches that Carmen's 401A just laid down. Again, through 4 layers of heavy grade denim. I've gotten notes multiple times from people that have tried to sew less than this with machines, both vintage and contemporary, and their machines struggle with it. And Carmen's could have done much, much more than this. This is 4 layers. We could have gone to 6, we could have gone to 8. We probably could have gone to 10 if we could fit it underneath the presser foot, and her machine would have gotten it done like a hiccup. Easily, 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 easily. All right, so I had some more leather. I had some more leather here that I was considering sewing, but I'm going to throw that to the side. We've done a ton of leather already. And now we're going to focus on trying to set this machine to do some of the primary patterns that are built into the machine. So let me first of all get the material underneath the presser foot, and then we'll come out on the shot and we'll look at setting some of these patterns. And I did cheat a little bit. I did write down some of the pattern settings on a piece of paper, but we'll also open the lid just to confirm that I wrote them down correctly. And we're going to probably sew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're probably going to sew 7 different patterns, which are all of the primary patterns for this machine. So let me see where my shot is right now. And I forgot to lock it. Yeah. All right, that's okay. We'll come out on the shot and we'll set these patterns probably right about there. Yeah. And I know you're having trouble seeing the left side a little bit, but you've already seen it up close, so you kind of have an idea of how it looks. So let's take that spool of thread off, which again is a little bit awkward. Set that down on the bed. Open up our little door, and then again on the upper right side we've got our patterns that are primary patterns for the 401. I can see I've got to change that shot a little bit more. That's way, way out. Let's go in on the patterns first. So the patterns I'm going to try to do is BL through BR. The last one we're going to do is like a McDonald's symbol. It looks like almost. And again, we're going to be setting the stitch width at less than 5. We're already there. We're at 3 right now, which is perfect. And now we're going to be manipulating that stitch length as well. Like I said, moving it more down towards the fine region to make that, that primary pattern stitch a little bit more defined. And then we're going to be setting the letters like you see on the cover there. So the first one we're going to set is we're going to move the brown knob again to B. Then we're going to move the white knob to L. We'll sew that. Then we're going to go to the next one, do the same thing, changing the letter sequence. The next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, and the next one. And, you know, I won't be going back and forth because that would be insulting your intelligence. You already know which knobs they are. The B again is going to be the brown knob, the outside one that you're going to have to push in. The white one is going to be the second letter, and you're going to have to pull that out in order to change the settings on this side. So white is this side, brown is that side. And then we can see our stitch letters right there. B, L, B, M, B, N, B, O, B, P. I'm not talking about the gas station. BQ, now I'm getting hungry because I'm thinking about barbecue, BR, and that'll be about it. So, alright, so let me get the thread back up on top of the machine. We'll set our first one right here, and then I won't be showing you the settings for the other ones, I'll just be doing it. Does that make sense? Of course it does. You guys are so doggone smart. Alright, so closing the lid, and yes, that is metal, that's what you're hearing. Or at least aluminum cast. The 401 is built very, very well. I can tell you, going inside and out of it, it's a beautiful machine. So again, the first thing that we are going to set now is for that first primary pattern. Yeah, that's pretty good, I think. So BL. So I'm going to first of all change the brown knob. And I'll move it from A to B. I think that's pretty much spot on. And then we're moving the white knob by pulling it out. Again, the brown one you push in, the white one you pull out. The white one I'm going to change to L. So I've got to move it up one position from where it is right now. It's on K. And again, you just pull it out and then release it, and it should lock back into place. So now we're set on BL. We've got the stitch width on less than 5. We've got it on 3. And now I'm just going to make a modification on the stitch length. I'll move it up. I don't want to go too far up because then we're not going to get any feed dog action really. but I do want to make it shorter so we get better definition on this first primary stitch pattern. And for this first one, I will not put any music on. We'll just stitch it off and you can listen to Carmen's machine run, okay? All right, here we go, primary stitch pattern number 1. I just made another quick little adjustment on the stitch length. I was like, I do want to go a little bit shorter. All right, here we go. That was easy. And I'm not going to keep showing you them. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll buzz down, and then I'll show you all of them in the end. All of them in the end. I can't speak very well today. Probably should get a quick drink of water. Okay, so let's get that back underneath the presser foot. I'll make an adjustment off camera for the next primary pattern stitch, which is going to be at a setting of BM. So the left one I don't have to change, which is controlled by the brown knob. The one on the right I will have to change and move it one more click up. It's right on L. I'll pull the white one out. I'll move it up to M. Drop that back down. Our stitch width again can stay exactly as it was because it's less than 5. And now we'll buzz down and do the next stitch pattern. Now I'm going to shorten that stitch length just a little bit more to try to get a little bit more definition. All right, so here we go, primary stitch pattern number 2. Here we go. Yeah, I think I could probably even make that shorter because it's not as defined as I'd like it. Let me do that. Let me go ahead and click that, clip those threads, and we'll shorten that stitch length even a little bit more. Otherwise, these are not going to have the definition that you would be able to generate if you made that stitch length even shorter. Okay. So we'll move on to our next primary stitch pattern, which is going to be BN. So again, I don't have to change a thing on the B side, the left side. But now I have to move the other one up one click by pulling out the white knob. There we go. Shorten it just a little bit more. So we're right on stitch length. We're almost like at around between 15 and 20 right now. So we're pretty tight. I would say I actually moved it up even a little bit further, so we're even closer to 20 now. So we're going to do this next stitch, primary stitch pattern, which is BN. I probably should have a pen and start checking these off, otherwise I'm going to potentially repeat the same one again. Again, it's a different dynamic when you're on camera, folks. It just is. You get a little bit distracted sometimes, and you might do something you otherwise wouldn't do. Also, again, just a reminder, make sure your take-up arm is all the way up. And we're going to do this next stitch pattern, which is BN. Bravo November. Here we go. Maybe I made these too short, huh? They're almost microscopic. Okay, so that was BN. Now we're going to go on to BO. And I'm going to try tweaking one other thing. We have to be less than 5, but I'm going to try to go on the stitch width from 3 up closer to 4 and just see what impact that has as well on the stitch appearance. Alright, so press your foot down and we'll get set for our next one. Matter of fact, you know what I could do is I've got enough material. I could sew the same stitch pattern and just see how it changes the appearance of it. Does that make sense? All right, let's try the same stitch pattern, which is going to be BN, and we just increase the stitch width slightly. We're still less than 5, and we'll see what impact that has, if any. Here we go. Yeah, I like that better, actually. Kind of draws a nice contrast. So I think we'll stay closer to the 4 range. I like the way that stitch pattern presents better with a little bit wider setting, as long as we don't go up to 5. We can't go up to 5. It tells us that we have to be less than 5. So there's my curly thread. Yeah, I like that one better. Don't you? Wait a second. I can see that I didn't change the camera shot. You're probably saying, Scott, how long was it going to take you to notice that? Oh, good gumdrops. I'm getting ready for my big trip to Oklahoma right now, and I think my head is a little bit out of the game already, so I apologize for that. Well, you'll see the stitches anyway. Create a little bit of suspense, but all you could do is, actually one of your senses was better, because then you could listen to the machine, but you weren't seeing the machine stitching, so then you could even have a more acute... Yeah, I screwed up. All right, let's try this again. All right, so I'm going to leave it on right around 4 for stitch width. I'm going to make it even shorter now on the stitch length. We're almost at 20 now, 20 stitches per inch. And now we're going to change it from BN to BO. So we're on B right now on the left side. We got to change this to O, so we're just going up 1 click. So we're on O, and now we're ready for the next stitch pattern. All right, here we go. Which it appears it's a blind hem stitch, doesn't it? That's kind of our sweet spot right now, don't you think? I think that's our sweet spot. So again, I've got stitch width on 4. We started running it at 3, and I just don't think they presented well. And then I did just reduce our stitch length a little bit more. It took us from around 15 down to 20, and I'm liking the way that blind hem is looking, don't you? So I think that's our sweet spot. 4 on the stitch width, and right around between 15 to 20 on stitch length. And those stitch patterns are going to present a lot better than they initially did at less of a stitch width setting and stitch length. All right, I forgot to check that. So that's our BO pattern. And we've got 3 more that we can do under those primary patterns again that are engineered into the 401A. So let's see, I'm going to check off our BO. We just did that one. And now we're going to go to BP. Not the gas station, not the gas station. So our B is pretty much in a fixed position. We don't have to do a thing with the left side, but we do have to pull that white knob out, and we do have to take it 1 click up from O to P. And now we'll sew that next primary pattern that's built into Carmen's machine. All right, here we go. Ah, my building block. See that? And we could have shortened that even more. We could have adjusted the stitch width. Again, as long as you stay within the tolerance of what the machine tells you to stay within, with all these primary patterns, we have to be less than 5 as far as stitch width. It doesn't give us any restrictions as far as stitch length. We can change the total look of these stitch patterns. So you could have an unlimited number of stitch patterns, literally, by just tweaking that stitch width. As long as you keep it less than 5, you know, you could go all the way down to 1 for that matter. Matter of fact, we could could do that just for kicks and giggles. We could sew the same pattern we just sewed, which is this building block style one, because we still have a lot of material left. And we only have like 2 more stitches after this to do. So we're going to sew the same building block one, which is on settings BP, Bravo Papa, but we're going to reduce our stitch width all the way from 4. Why don't we not go crazy? We'll reduce it from 4 all the way down to 2, because we're still less than 5. Yes, I'm a mathematician. Duh. Hello. Okay, so we're sewing exactly the same primary stitch pattern as we just sewed right here, right there, the building block one, but we've reduced the stitch width from 4 all the way down to 2. Let's see what we get. All right, here we go. After I get my take-up arm up. There we go. Here we go now. After I get my foot on the foot control. Here we go. That's interesting. Definitely, I mean, it almost looks like a wayward straight stitch, doesn't it? So I think we'll stick with the 4. The 4 is going to give us definitely a better pattern of presentation than reducing that stitch width down further. But we could always create other things. There's no harm in that. There's no harm in creating other things. It just gives us a different appreciation for what the output of Carmen's machine can be. You know, we can go from this to that. We could then go, you know, even tweak it a little bit higher. We could change the stitch length, and we can totally change the look of that stitch pattern. Totally change it. All right, let's get our material back in place. But for now, I'm going to leave the stitch width where I have it at 4, because I just don't. I'm not as fond of this one as that one. I just don't like it. All right. So we'll stay with the same stitch length, and now we're going to change it from BP over to BQ, barbecue. We're going to change it to barbecue. So our left side stays the same. We're grabbing that white knob, we're pulling it out. Yep, I'm just trying to make sure I released it in the correct spot. So now we're at BQ. Stitch width is 4, stitch length is right around 20, and let's see what we get on this primary stitch pattern. Here we go. Okay, kind of a sneaky pattern. That's pretty, isn't it? I like that one. And we could always reduce the length even a little bit more to make that even, I think, sharper looking, which we probably will try. We just can't go all the way too far down, because then we're not going to get any material movement, obviously. All right, clip that thread. Get our material back in place, and we'll sew the same stitch pattern, primary stitch pattern, and we'll just shorten that stitch length even a little bit more. Again, we're sewing BQ right now, BQ. So I'm going to shorten it even a little bit more, not much. We're probably at about 23, 24 stitches per inch now. And I will put on a little bit of music. What's the last one we did? I don't think we did Peacefully yet, did we? No, I don't think so. So let's play Peacefully next. I'll see how loud it is. And it may be that my internet went out again. Nope. I'm seeing candles in a room right now on tables. What about you? That's what I'm seeing. Alright, so this is the same pattern, BQ, and we just shortened it a little bit more. Let's see what we get. Here we go. Oh yeah, I definitely like this better. See the difference? between those two, this just has a little bit better definition on it, I think. It kind of gives that, that curvaceousness to that stitch pattern just a little bit better when we shorten that stitch length just a little bit more. You know, again, from around 20 down to about 20, close to 25 stitches per inch probably. We're almost at the max. We're really, really close to the max right now. Yeah, they're not dramatically different, but they clearly present differently. I don't know. Now that I'm looking at them, I'm almost more fond of the one on the left. I'm kind of divided. Maybe I'll bring that stitch length back just a hair again. So, all right, let's get this back underneath the presser foot, and we'll move on to our last primary stitch pattern that's on Carmen's machine, which is BR. So I'm just going to adjust that white knob and move it up from Q to R. There we go. So we haven't done a darn thing with the left knob, the brown one. We've been on B the whole time. We've only been changing the white knob settings that are on the right side of the machine. So now we're going to do BR. Bob Robert, or Bravo Roberta, or Beef Sticks Rigatoni. I have no idea. All right, here we go. The final primary stitch pattern on Carmen's 1956 401A. Here we go. Yes, I had to throttle it up a little bit for the last one. Are you kidding? And that's a beautiful stitch pattern too. It's almost like the hill, like a hill in the valley type thing. Or some people have said it looks a little bit like the waves on the ocean. You know, the cresting wave kind of just coming up and down. However you visualize it is how you visualize it. And I feel like Bob Ross right now. Make your own picture. Yeah. Those are all cool patterns. And I'm definitely thinking we learned a lesson as far as the stitch width. You know, don't go for the 3, which is where we would be when we were doing all the straight stitching. Definitely go for the 4. The 4 is going to definitely make it look a little bit nicer. I would just be curious, a little bit, if we left the stitch length alone and we just push that stitch width up a little bit further. Again, we have to be less than 5. But we could still go like to 4.5. 4.5. Let's see what we get on this final stitch pattern that we just did. Whether you see it as mountains and a hill or whether you see it as waves on the ocean. We'll sew it at a 4.5 stitch width instead of a 4, and we'll see how it looks different than the other one we just did. All right, here we go. After I get my take-up arm all the way up. All right, here we go. And I'm going to take it slow just so you can see we can slow it down. Oh yeah, I like that one. I think I like that one even better, don't you? Can you see that in the shot? Yeah, of course you can. This one has just a little bit, it's a little bit, well, it's obviously wider because we increased the stitch width, but it just seems to really draw that stitch pattern out even more with this last row that we just did. Some of you might like the other row better, but I like this better. It's got a little bit more defined curve on the bottom, and the points are a little bit more defined on it as well because we increased that stitch pattern width just slightly. But I think it definitely had an impact. Yeah, thumbs up. I like that one better. So let's clip these threads. And again, just the ease of how Carmen's machine is accomplishing all of the sew-offs, not just these primary pattern sew-offs that we just did, but all of them. I think just spectacular. Just spectacular. And it got better once we started messing around with the stitch length and the stitch width. So it just goes to show you, if you start at a certain point and you're doing stitch patterns and you're just not impressed by them, try within the boundaries of what the guidance of what the machine gives you or the manual, push those boundaries to the max, either on the low end or the high end, and see what you like better. I think we found that we like the stitch patterns a lot better, at least I do, when we're pushing that stitch width almost up to the boundary. Again, we have to be less than 5, so the very last one we just did, we pushed it up to 4.5, and our stitch length is right around 20, yeah, right around 20, 22 right now as far as stitch length. And I think we got some real good pattern presentations, or if I really want to do some alliteration, primary pattern presentations. And I don't know if I'm going to have that material turned far enough in relation to the angle of the camera, but we kind of started with these on the far end, and they're just not overly impressive. There's some variation, but it's like, okay, whatever. And then we jumped into that blind hem, and all of a sudden our efforts started to come to life a little bit. The stitch pattern was much more defined, a lot more visibility of the stitching, and we could just see it, and it's just like, yeah, I like that. I like that. We had the building block one, and then I kind of goofed around with it a little bit, and that was a fail. I think we went from 4 on the stitch width down to 2, and it was just like, nah, I don't like it. And some of the other stitch patterns as well, we got some better outcomes as we were kind of messing around between the stitch width and the stitch length. So we'll look at the field of stitches. I like the field of dreams. And again, I think as you become more attuned to the 401A and you start experimenting, between the stitch width, the stitch length, maybe even use different material, maybe use a different needle, maybe use different thread. All of a sudden those stitches will present slightly differently than they are right now. We'll turn around and look at the lock stitch. And we'll start on the far left side and look at the last stitch that we did. And I would probably, all in all, I'm seeing good stitching, but I would probably increase that upper tension slightly. I've got the upper tension actually fairly low right now, so we could definitely make those stitches pop even more than we're seeing, but we're getting some real good stitching nonetheless. And again, right now we're looking at our lock stitch. Yeah, slight increase on upper tension, and I think we would have a winning recipe as far as these stitches. So again, if we come out on the shot and look at the totality of the stitching, again, this is our lock stitch. I would definitely give this a pass and just recognize the fact that, as you become more familiar with a machine and you experiment more with the stitch patterns, whether they're the primary ones or some of the other stitch patterns that this machine is capable of doing, you'll refine it to a point, and particularly if you're using some of the same type of material, because again, the stitch is going to present differently as you shift between materials as well. You'll get it down to a science, and you'll get something that you really like. And that really is the most important thing, is that you're happy with it. Now, if you're sewing for someone else, then you've got that other stakeholder, and you've got to look at pleasing them too, as far as getting the look of the stitch that they're looking for, that they want. But again, between these primary stitch patterns that we sewed a variety of, and then I'll just kind of drop these on the bed. We'll build our stack in a sense. Yeah, you can see that pretty clear, I think. will come in just a little bit. So these were our primary pattern sew-offs. And again, we did denim 4 layers. Set that right there. You can kind of see that again. We did our compressed felt. We did 3 layers. We did our Italian leather and generated a beautiful stitch outcome as far as that straight stitch. We did our genuine cowhide and again generated a beautiful stitch top and bottom on this cowhide. We did our genuine elk hide, again the equivalent of sewing a belt, and generated an absolutely gorgeous stitch output on that as well. And last but certainly not least, we did our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is it 6 layers? Double checking, 2, 4, yep. We did our 6 layers of commercial grade canvas. And the machine, number one, it sewed through it effortlessly. And it laid down just a gorgeous stitch, top stitch, and lock stitch through something that is as thick as that. So you can just look at this mound of confirmation sew-offs that I've done to show that this machine is ready to go to work. And again, most people are never going to go to this depth of showing this many sew-offs with diverse materials, manipulating stitch patterns, needle swing, everything else that was a part of all of these sew-offs, and get an outcome as consistent as this. It really speaks volumes of, number one, the core design of the 401A being a fabulous slant-o-matic machine, and again with that larger motor, getting everything done just without any difficulty at all. But again, it points back to the way I prepared this machine. And with that little intro, we will pop over to Facebook. And I'm hoping that my internet is still working. Let's do a quick little test here. Yeah, look like we're good to go. So mainly what I'm going to show you in these shots, and we're not going to dwell on them, but I do want to show them to you. And I have a lot more shots that I posted as I was going through the machine in conjunction with this same post on Facebook. So you'll definitely want to check those out as well. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of them in this premiere. So you can't see a lot from this distance. All you can see is that I've got a bunch of things going on right now on the workbench. Part of it was the foot control was the foot controller was defective. There were wiring issues where they had literally screwed some sheet metal screws into the side of the machine where the foot controller would normally plug in, right around here. And they ended up damaging those very fragile copper sleeves that the foot controller would plug into and make contact with. So I just had to do a lot more work on the machine to rectify, I'll just say it, the foolhardiness or the stupidity of someone that really wasn't using the machine as it was intended to be used. They could have fixed that very easily by just getting another foot controller with a proper plug-in. So there I'm kind of taking the foot controller apart because I've got to figure out exactly what's going on with it. These are some just close-up shots of things you've already seen in this premiere of the control center. You know, again, the control area we changed with the brown knob, the control area over on the right side that we changed with the white knob. And initially you could see there was a price tag stuck right down here. And that was part of what I had to work as far as getting some of the stickers off as well. There also was one of those awful sewing center stickers on this machine too, which some of you reacted to on Facebook. There you can see the little price sticker right there. And again, as I've said to some people that have posted on Facebook, I don't I don't like it when people will say, you know, if I post a picture, say, of a 201-2, and it's a fully restored machine that I've spent probably 16 hours working on, and it's running at the top of its game, and it's spectacularly beautiful. And someone will all of a sudden chime in and they'll post a picture of one they picked up at a rummage sale as if it's equal to my machine. I'm not trying to sound cocky, but it's not equal, folks. It's not even close to being equal, mechanically, electrically, and aesthetically. And they'll want to talk about how much they paid for it. You know, they paid whatever ridiculous amount for the machine. They basically stole the machine, and it's somehow bragging rights for them. Well, if they're proud of the fact they got a good value, then just say you got a good value. Don't post a price, because I'm either going to delete it or I'm going to reach out to you and ask you to modify it, just because it takes away from the intrinsic value of our vintage machines when people are talking about how cheap they picked one up. They're cheapening the value of our vintage machines when they're talking about that $10 machine, that $15 machine, that $20 machine. If you want to talk among your family and friends and say, man, I got a steal on this machine, I picked it up for blah, 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 that's fine, that's your business. But don't post it on my Facebook page and expect it to stay there, because I want people to understand the value of these machines. I want them to understand the treasure of these machines. And when you're talking about rummage sale finds or garage sale finds or whatever, you're taking away from what we're trying to build here, and people appreciating the value of these machines so that they don't end up on a curb. They don't end up, you know, in a junk heap or recycled or something like that because someone says, oh yeah, I saw one on this channel, it was only 10 bucks. That's not the message we want to send. We want people to look at these as treasures. And so if you want to post, you know, one of your pictures of one of your machines that's similar to the one that I'm posting, no problem. Just stay away from the price deal, okay? You know, my point being made is, not only is, I'm going to break away from this for a second, not only is Carmen's machine a treasure in this year of 2020, and after I've gone through this machine and fully restored it, we're looking at about a $500 or $600 machine. Now, what if you turned around right now and you tried to build that same machine today that was built back in 1956? I'm telling you, the value right now after I've gone through this machine, and you've already seen that evidenced in the sew-offs, the value of this machine is right around $500 on the low end. If you tried to build this same machine today, it would be about a $1,200, $1,500 machine. Maybe even, you know, looking at it, depending on aluminum going up and down in cost, maybe even closer to $2,000 when you're looking at trying to build a machine just like this in 2020. That's my point in why I don't want you people putting price amounts if you decide to share your machine within my post. No problem, you're sharing it. I think it's fabulous. I love it. Stay away from the prices, because we want people to look at this, especially people outside of vintage machines that don't have a clue about the valuation of a machine, and look at Carmen's machine and go, wow, that's fabulous. It's amazing how it's sewed. And what? It only weighs about 5 pounds more than a featherweight? Are you serious? Really? And we want them to be in awe and wonder, legitimately, of just how fabulous and spectacular this vintage 1956 401A is. And it may be in their own mind to be saying, holy cow, if you were to build a machine like that today, can you imagine how much it would cost to build a machine of this quality and this caliber? That's what we want to build here. That's my mission. I know Hans and Bill share that same mission. All of us have gotten a deal on a machine, but we don't want to broadcast that from the mountaintop through Facebook or through YouTube or otherwise. We want people to look at that machine and see it for the intrinsic value of what it is, the treasure of what it is, not the rip-off price we happen to stumble across a machine and get it for. All right? I think my message is clear. So rather than having your post deleted, post away, just stay away from pricing. Unless you paid a ridiculous price for it, then I think that would, you know, especially if you paid near what the value of that machine was, maybe that's another deal. So here we're just looking down into the bobbin raceway area. Faceplate area. Again, Spectacular threading diagram, even the orientation of the bobbin. Great quick reference. There's even a clearer shot of it. If they had come up with a better plan as far as the pattern settings, I think that would have been super awesome. I think that would have been super awesome if they had come up with an easier one than removing the spool of thread and having to open the lid every single time. Yes, you could use the owner's manual, I get that, but it's there, it's convenient, it's right there within your fingertips without having to flip pages. It's just more difficult to get to. Here you can see the way Carmen's machine started. Again, one of the spool pens was snapped off to a nub, the other one was completely gone, so we had to replace those. And those are the replacements that I selected, which again I think are fabulous because you don't even need a felt with the machine. Now we're going to kind of take the top of the machine off and look inside of it. Very solid engineering on the 401A, built very well. It did come with one cam, which I didn't demonstrate in this premiere. Again, there are a variety of cams that go with this machine that will give you even a wider scope of decorative stitching options. Here we're looking down on the balance wheel end of the machine, and here you can see that all metal worm gear that interlaces with the balance wheel, which is made out of a Teflon plastic type material. I would say it's probably closer to Teflon than plastic. I'll kind of zoom in on it. And you can see how those the teeth on the worm gear and the teeth on the balance wheel interlace, and that's what gives you that positive traction, that direct drive. And just obviously a lot of cleanliness issues beyond the electrical wiring issues and the faulty foot controller and the missing spool pins, and the list goes on. You get the idea. There's a real nice shot of the all-metal worm gear on this 401A and the interlacing Teflon style type matching worm gear that they interlace together with. Cam stack, again with all the built-in primary stitches and just all the stitch output you can get from this machine without ever adding a cam to it. You can see how robust and how large that cam stack is to afford the stitch output options that you can generate from this 401A. And that's just a clear shot of the cam stack there with that cam taken off. A lot of mechanical components to this that are needed as we're changing from one letter to another with those two knobs on the front of the machine. It's just amazing all the pivot points that have to be cleaned, serviced, and lubricated. And you can see Dr. Singer kind of looking at that control field there, and he's going, yeah, it looks pretty daunting, but it's a snap. You can figure it out easy enough. And there I'm just showing you again the very unique throat plate assembly on this 401A, and it's true of the other Slant-O-Matics as well, where instead of dropping feed dogs, you can raise that plate to reduce the needle, to reduce the feed dog pull, where if you want to sew more delicate materials, or you can pop that completely up and easily access the area underneath by the feed dogs to clean out the lint and all the other junk that'll build up. And that's what we've done right here. We've taken that little cover off. That is a combination of kind of a feed dog cover, throat plate cover, needle cover. It's all 3 in 1. And now we're able to clean that area out if we want to. There's Dr. Singer kind of looking into the guts of the machine. Again, a very well built machine, nicely built back in the 1950s. And that's it for pictures that I have within the primary listing. Again, I posted a lot more as comments as I was going through the machine. There's a quicker way maybe for me to get back to it. Some of those shots are really cool. They're just really super cool. If my internet's working, otherwise we'll never ever see them. You'll have to see them yourself. That was Hans's dog right there. Oh, just a reminder again, we're kind of looking at this right now. The major contest is underway as we speak for us hitting the milestone of 9,000 subscribers. And you want to check out the video where Hans presents all the details of what that contest is comprised of, what you need to do, what you need to accomplish in order to potentially win the very rare Type 8E that I am offering, and that you can see as part of that premiere as well. Now you can see how many different pictures I posted. It says we have 79 comments. A lot of that is what I posted. See if I can open that up and just show you. I'll just show you a few of the pictures. You can look at them if you're a Facebooker. You can look at them yourself and see them in detail. I'll try to get close enough that I don't have to expand them because that'll take even longer. But what you're seeing right there in that shot is you're seeing the plug-in that had to be rewired, and the space in there, as I shared with one of the folks on Facebook, it's so tight when you're trying to get those wires. You know, again, whenever you're dealing with plastic parts like this plastic housing, you've got to be so careful when you're dealing with these metal connectors that can create pressure and stress points on that, and it's very easy to crack them, especially as you're trying to manipulate those wires and fit them into those tight little spaces so that you can put the other half back on and can actually you know, close the cover and use it as it was intended. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I said to a couple of folks, you better be real patient with yourself when you're doing it. Otherwise, it's you know, you're going to have something that gets cracked and damaged. See if that's lined up even close. Probably not. Yeah, I don't think if I click on these, I think it'll expand the one, but it's not going to go through all of them, I don't think. Let me see if it does. Yeah, it doesn't. You just have to keep going back and forth and back and forth. Here I've actually taken the motor out. Where you can see those long needle nose type pliers is actually where the motor slides into a metal sleeve. Can't see a thing. And I'm cleaning that metal sleeve out where that motor will slide into, and then at the opposite end that worm gear will pop up and interlace with the balance wheel. And when you're doing this, you've got to take the balance wheel off as well. And I'm only doing this because I know a lot of you do not do Facebook. Oh yeah, this is an interesting shot. You're seeing the motor removed, and you'll see that worm gear at the top of it. Again, this is the worm gear that interlaces with the balance wheel. And that motor has to be taken apart and cleaned as well, which I did. And then eventually you slide it back into that well, and you have to connect it back up again to the machine again. But it's a spectacular design, it really is. The Singer concept of having a vertically mounted motor versus having one mounted to the rear like most of the Singer machines. Again, I've got so many pictures, I'm not going to be able to share all of them. I'll share this one because this was part of the damage that had to be repaired on this. I had to take it completely apart to get to these very, very thin copper sleeves that you can see there. I've already rewired the actual plug-in, and I'm testing the tolerance to see, because they were stretched out with these sheet metal screws, when you tried to plug it, after I rewired the plug-in itself to plug into the machine, it was so loose that it wouldn't have stayed in place. If Carmen was trying to use it, this plug on the side of the machine would keep falling out, or it would stop running, and then she'd have to push it back in or hold it in, and it just wasn't going to work. So those copper sleeves had to be basically refabricated so that they would work correctly with the machine, which added a lot of time to the project, a lot of time. I didn't anticipate that right away, but you got to do what you got to do. So again, these are all probably close to 50 pictures. And we're obviously not going to look at all of them, but I just want to give you an idea. Here's how they had it connected to the machine initially. They literally took these screws, and I'm not going to expand this. Let's see. They literally took these screws and they screwed them into those very delicate copper sleeves and just totally destroyed them. And the other risk you can see immediately as well is that if one of these screws loosens a little bit, they can easily touch each other and short out. Or if someone potentially touches the two of them at the same time, they could be shocked as well. So it's just it was not a good solution to the problem of them not having a proper plug adapter to put on the side of the machine. And this is the actual plug adapter, at least part of it. Kind of expand this so you can see it a little bit better. You can see those copper sleeves. But all of this obviously takes time to take apart. And then there were some cracks in this as well that had to be repaired. So it just adds to the project time, which again, Carmen doesn't have a problem with that. She gets it, but it's something that you don't expect to do at the outset, but you have to do it eventually because it has to be set up correctly. There you can see some of the delicate nature of the wiring. Again, you're trying to work within a space that has less than millimeters of tolerance in getting those wires into that plastic casing, and then you've got to clear the casing enough so that you're not putting undue pressure on the casing, because then you'll crack it, and then you're totally out of commission as far as go past that one. You can see the end of that plug-in as it's intended right here, instead of the way they had it set up with the two screws. And that's proper right there. That's the way it should have been from the very beginning after it was rewired. Let me bring my shot up a little bit so you can see that. So you can see the difference between using the prongs that are part of the actual adapter and using sheet metal screws, which is what they did. That's just part of the foot controller that was cracked. Here you can kind of see the field of stuff that's going on as far as putting all this together. These are the two sides of that plug-in adapter. These are the actual copper leads that have to be plugged into the machine, and then also you have to wire to them as well. And then these wiring things have to be modified so they'll fit within the confines of that little case. It's complicated. So, but you can just let me move the camera and you can just look at these pictures. There's just a field of pictures that I wanted to share, so I posted them on Facebook. I'll just kind of scroll up them real quick, and then you can you don't have to have a Facebook account to look at these, as far as I know, so you can just go to the page and then just view them. And again, if we were to click each one, it would take a long time, so we're not going to do that. I'll just pause on each one a little bit. But I'm partly showing you this so you can just appreciate the depth of servicing and my process on machines. Here I'm working on deep cleaning on the inside of the balance wheel as well, which most people would never think to do. And I'm just going to keep scrolling and scrolling. And there's my special grease on the worm gears. And scrolling. And this is why when I tell folks that the average service on a machine like this is going to take about 12 hours, even longer when you have to do repairs like this, they're in awe because they've taken machines in for service before to their local service center, and the machine is generally going to be done in about 45 minutes to an hour. So my process is, you're seeing all of these progress shots of steps that I took the machine through, gives you an appreciation for why my process is about 12 to 14 times longer than if you take it in and pay a comparable price at a local sewing center. Plus, a lot of these things, they would never ever agree to do it. Not at the price that they would be charging you, 100, 125 bucks. Are you kidding? If you wanted them to do all of the process shots that you're seeing here, they would want about probably $200 to $250. There, I've rewired the foot controller and repaired it. There's the actual plug-in complete. Much better solution than two sheet metal screws. Oh, this is a great, so that was my last shot right there, showing that plug-in. But this is a great thing to highlight right here, and that is, again, just reminding you that I'm going to be out of the area for a while, traveling down to Oklahoma to visit this particular sewing center and museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So Bill and Hans will bridge the gap as they've done before so generously in helping folks with questions. And again, appreciate them so much, and the resource that they are to all of you around the world that have questions and needs for support, research, whatever it is. And they always are willing to jump in and help out. So thank you again, guys, for doing that. So this wraps this premiere up. Kind of a longer premiere, but that's okay. Again, covering Carmen's 1956 401A, going through just a wide spectrum of sew-offs and doing a spectacular job. Again, thank you, Carmen, for the opportunity of being able to repair and restore and revitalize your 401A, so that not only is she drop dead gorgeous now, but she also sews up a storm. So stay tuned for other premieres like this, where you'll see incredible machines. Again, machines that are not equal to other machines out there. They're far superior, and it's because of the amount of time that I invest in them, plus my selection process of picking machines that are original owner machines for the ones that I'm preparing. So don't settle for less. Invest a little bit more money and get one of my fully restored machines, or send your machine in as Carmen has done, so I have the opportunity to optimize it. Okay? Blah, 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 blah. So, ba-da, that's all, folks. God bless you, and we'll see you again soon. And watch for those updates from Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right, take care.